Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and welcome to your Prot Warrior gameplay guide for patch 6.2. So what we're going to do is, my warrior's a bit overgeared for any of the easier content that I could rock into and try and demonstrate stuff for you, is first things first, let's go over Mythic Hellfire Assault, okay? This is my guild's first kill of this. We did this in one of the lowest item levels in the world, actually. I believe I was 702. I think there's like 2 or 3 guilds that were lower than us, so pretty impressed with this kill. And lots to do as the tank. Very different than its heroic or normal counterpart. Also an entirely different encounter. Very, very cool. Lots to manage. So what are we going to be looking at here? Is some big aspects that we'll be doing is trying to create death balls. Really important. So what is a death ball? A death ball is gathering the mobs as much as possible to allow optimum cleave for your DPSs. This is super crucial because we have so many adds on low health that we want to make sure that they're dying efficiently and DPS isn't being wasted. This will mean more mobs die, which frees you up to attack the larger, scarier mobs better, all that kind of good stuff. One of the big things for tanks to worry about here is smash or slam or whatever the fuck it's called that the berserkers do. So what you'll notice is just above on the right hand side near the middle of the screen is you'll notice a big buff appear. A big tell me when, if you know what that add-on is, showing me how many stacks of this I have. And we'll be making decisions throughout the fight on when to use our active mitigation when it's more important. So at some points you'll be like, oh Preacher, you've got shield block off cooldown. I'm holding back, and I'll talk about it as we're doing it. I'm holding back a little bit because I definitely want back-to-back shield blocks when my stacks get higher. That kind of decision is going to be making. The choices I made here, as I talked about in the talents, is Shockwave. The reason I chose Shockwave for this fight is, one, the Dragoons can be stunned, and also the Engineers. Now, this is what happens when you go into the fight and you're like, oh, what talents are best here? You know, Dragon Roar does more damage, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. The reason I took Shockwave here is because I wanted to make sure I could interrupt the Engineers' repair. Engineers try and repair the tanks and the siege engines. What I want to do is make sure that never happens. I can't always rely on my DPSs to do it, just as you should have that mindset. Don't rely on your DPS to do things you should do. So I take Shockwave so I can help out with that as well. A couple of things that will be happening is, one, my monk partner, Shade Monk, as you can see is on my focus there, will be tanking on the right hand side. I'm going to be tanking on the left. If you've never done this on Mythic, you split the group up into 2 groups of 10 and split off to the sides, and there's a nightmare chaos moment, and you'll see it when it comes up, just a screen full of red, mobs spread out everywhere, total nightmare. You'll note we do not have a DK for grip, so the rule there was I will pick up the named mobs, which named mobs means the scary ones that are like big mini bosses essentially, and my monk tank with rushing Jade Wind and the ability to throw the barrels everywhere will be picking up all the little trashy adds by rolling around and rushing Jade Winding everywhere. So we killed this relatively easily. I will die at the end, and that's purely because we'd never really seen the last phase of this fight, which is generally a soft enrage, and I get caught out by a extra berserker that I didn't know was going to appear, which is always quite annoying. Alright, so without further ado, in 3, 2, 1, let's go. So we're obviously preparing for the pull here. Now my job here is going to be to take Siege Master Martak. I'm going to do that by pre-potting and charging him, and I'm going to give him a taunt because my monk is going to go ham on the AoE tanking. Now monk bursty AoE is a little bit good. So as you can see, I go straight in with a bloodbath, get in there. Now I don't pop shield block straight away. I'm waiting until after this shockwave. One thing to bear in mind when you're tanking, guys, is if a boss is casting something, he's not meleeing you, which means your shield block is doing nothing. And a shield block every second is kind of precious. You need to make sure you're taking advantage of that. What you'll see now is, although I have Martak, I'm dragging him into as many mobs as possible because the whole raid is cleaving here. This is crucial. As a tank, more important than any statistics or piece of armor you can get is making sure that things die. And the best way you can do that, of course, is to make sure that everything is grouped up. So you'll see constantly I'm shifting around in order to improve the DPS of our raid. Now I pick up the Berserker. Now you can see that debuff there. You can see it's stacking up to 2. You can see it on the right hand side of the screen there near the middle. And that comes from the Berserker. It's going to play a very prominent part later in the fight. Now the way that's usually handled is, of course, after 2 stacks or whatever, the tanks will swap, so the debuff doesn't get too high. But obviously as we're splitting the group, as you can see now, then that's not going to be an issue, and I'm going to have to deal with all the stacks. So now you can see this is where Execute and Sudden Death comes in handy compared to Unyielding Strikes, in my opinion. You get these Execute procs and these things that need to die super quick, which gives you this random burst pretty regularly just to help get these things down. And it keeps things on pace. You can see how we're managing with this constant onslaught of spawns. Now you can see I've got 2 spawns here, so this has to be pre-planned. So I actually open up with a Revenge on these 2, which hits 2 targets. And then I bring the Berserker into the pack next to the Demolisher. You can see I'm trying to maximize cleave here. Now what you'll also notice is that I'm full rage. But I'm holding off as much as possible on using my shield blocks because I'm starting to get these stacks of Berserker. Okay, so I maybe lost 20 rage or something from a revenge, but that's okay because what's happening here is I'm getting the 2 stacks and then I'm going to get the 3 and the Berserker's still at 50% health. Now in a very scary scenario, guys. So you can see that's when I use my demoralizing shout because I'm running into this weird period of time. My shield block is back up, and I managed to survive that entire Berserker phase up to 4 stacks with all active mitigation up and not taking too much spike damage. I also use shield wall the second the 3rd stack is applied, just to make sure that my damage intake is smooth. Okay, all pre-planned. Got to make sure your cooldowns are there when you need them. Really simple. Another aspect I was trying to achieve there is not to use externals, because I'm going to use externals here on this Berserker, which is the important part, okay? Now, this Flame Belcher can actually one-shot you combined with the damage of the other tanks, so I choose here not to stack them. You see that fire there? I'm actually trying to avoid that as much as possible. You get a full face of that fire while tanking all these adds, you're going to be in trouble. You're really going to be in trouble. So at this point, I'm going to ask for an Iron Bark. Okay, when it gets to like the 3rd stack, I'm going to be asking for the Iron Bark from my Druid. Now, as the raid is split, I don't have access to all the cooldowns. So you see that 3rd stack came on. I asked for the Iron Bark on top of everything else just to make sure. You can see my damage intake is pretty goddamn smooth. Even though I'm taking 4 stacks of this, I'm not spiking too hard, which makes things better. And there you can see the interrupts coming in there. So a little spike, but the Berserker's dead. We're safe. Scary moment for sure is when you're running out of everything and that Berserker's stacked up to his 4 stacks. But if you manage it correctly, then you should be fine. So again, Shockwave interrupting that repair and then going ahead and interrupting the stun so our DPSs can continue to DPS. Here's the scary moment, right? And as a warrior, this is pretty goddamn terrifying because you don't have constant AoE and look how spread out everything is. My job right now in the initial spawn of this phase is just to try and make sure things aren't attacking DPSs. Then I go down and I hunt this name mob, the Grand Corruptor, Urok. There's going to be a second mini-boss spawning. Now, what you'll see here is he casts a lot, but I'm keeping shield block up because I'm going to have random aggro on various mobs, so the block is still going to come in handy. And on top of that, I'm about to start tanking Groot. Yes, Mr. Groot is here. After he's spawned in. And now, there you can see Mr. Groot has come in, he's jumping around and slamming people. You'll also notice that I'm not jumping out of the way of a lot of the spawn damage that occurs. I'm moving from Shockwave, and I'm also going to move from Grand Corruptor's sort of AoE around the sides. I'm going to take the spawn damage, and that's, again, a decision that's made. Purely, you see I move in the middle there, so I don't take any of that damage when mobs spawn, because it's more important to me at this point, or in my decision-making process, to keep the adds as gathered as possible. And you can see, once again, moving over, trying to get the mobs all into a ball as much as possible. Never easy. Never easy to do. And now, because I've got 3 stacks of the Smash, which is what the Berserkers do, my Monk has taken those because all the other adds are dead. So you can see how the synergy works. You are a tanking team. You've got to bear that in mind, guys. Every time you're tanking, you're a tanking team. You really are. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of each tank? And that frees me up then. My debuffs have reset. I can come and take this Berserker. All good. This is going to be a lonesome Berserker. No big scary threat at all. So I can use shield block a little bit earlier here because I'm not going to get too many stacks. And that is generally the thought process that goes on with this. Nice and easy. As soon as that 2nd stack hits, throw on the shield block, and then I should have shield block until it dies. Which I did. So off we go and split up again. Now this is where it gets a little bit chaotic, unfortunately, because I didn't know what mobs were going to spawn in what order because we'd wiped in that middle crazy phase before this. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen here. So we made the best priorities that we could, which means this is the part where you have to kind of be good as a tank. It's all good and well knowing what's coming and be pre-planned for it, but sometimes it all ends up random and you have to be very, very picky about what you're going to do. The fact that we timed our externals that way also means that you can see now all the externals are back. So I have access to an Iron Bark and a pain suppression on this side, which is very, very nice. Very, very nice to have the pain suppression and the Iron Bark ready for me whenever I need it. So standard priority here is to kill the Berserker. So you can see, once again, I'm going to go with this idea of keeping block up as much as possible. Use it now, please, Preacher, instead of slacking. I was trying to interrupt there like a noob. So I've got 3 stacks. This is terrible by me. There goes the block, but it's about to die. I could have used block way, way earlier then and taken way less damage. So it's goof on me, but it does tend to happen when you're not quite sure what's going on. Then I didn't know these Dragoons was going to spawn. So then it was a case of trying to get everything, tag it on, and just doing the best you can while maintaining active mitigation as much as possible. Now, I'm taking a lot of caster damage, and I could also shockwave those adds, so my point here was to use more shield barriers than shield blocks, while looking towards my set bonus to put block up on its own. So you can see the kind of idea I'm going there. If you're taking a lot of caster damage, what is your dangerous damage here? If it's going to be caster damage, then shield barrier can tend to be more handy. This is why discussions of like what's better, shield block or shield barrier, are really quite pointless, because it can change on a moment-to-moment basis in many fights. Still prioritizing targets. Yes, I'm the one marking. As you'll see, the skulls appear and all that kind of stuff. That's me just telling the DPS, please kill this. Now, at the moment, I'm just trying to gather everything, which is nightmarish to say the least. I'm not even probably sure. I'm probably calling out, please kill the Berserker, because this is going to be bad. So you can see I put the skull on it as soon as that tank dies. We needed the case out of the artillery. Didn't want the DPS to switch till then. And these are the decisions you want to make. Yes, I want this Berserker to die super fast, but at the same time, the raid needs to get the box out of the artillery reasonably quick, so we can handle a couple of stacks. So we've used Ironbark. There we go. Good stuff. Ironbark on the 4 stacks. Still trying to maintain some kind of cleverness. Now, I made a mistake here in not prioritizing the Berserker hard enough, because actually another one spawned while I was at 5 stacks. I'm going to die. Right? There's nothing I can do. I got to 6 stacks before it died, which then led to this situation. But what you can see there is a clear demonstration of the different ideas you will have while tanking, and also the constant environmental changes, which is why we can't look to sort of set in stone standards of what to use here. You pick what's best and roll with it. But also trying to balance the idea of active mitigation and, of course, using your externals effectively. So it's actually quite a cool kill. There you go. Job done. Just about made it at that soft enrage point when everybody goes crazy. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope that helped you out. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.